Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I want to thank all 261 subscribers I have now. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. I know it's been a long time since I've done any recordings, and I've been doing the loading videos that I did for my performances at the bar to show people the stuff that I do for charity. And speaking of charity, please go to my Patreon account and become a Patreon contributing member. Remember, all the funds go directly to charity. I don't see a penny of it; it just goes directly to charity. So, I also want to thank all my past subscribers for sticking with my channel. Thank you so much for sticking with my channel. Your support really, I really appreciate your support. So all my subscribers, I really, really want to thank you for your support. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Anyway, so let's try and get started. See how this goes. Hopefully it records good. Been having some troubles with this thing, so hopefully we won't have any troubles this time. In most cases, Derek was the first to jump at solving a problem, but he'd pretend not to see that whole scene, at least until he'd forcibly been thrown into the event by George's straightforwardness. Okay, fix my chair here. He was nearly as flustered as Nicholas, but was at least able to laugh at himself. I'm not sure that romantic history makes me an expert, bro. We haven't figured out if our breakup plan was a good idea after 10 years.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Well, the brains and brawn can't be denied for the trio, but your one weakness is clear. None of you boys can woo to save your life.
oh,
She is not my crush. As much as of a mess Nicholas had dissolved into, he was still together enough to set that misunderstanding straight. He was so offended, his voice cracked. Give me a moment, I gotta close the door. Why is the caps on? Okay, there it goes. Give me a moment. Okay, I read this part. She's a psychic. I've been on her wait list for months. A psychic? Then just answer. George re, resorted his suggestion, this time with an extra dose of obscenely. in the order tone. There was no reason to hesitate, as far as he could see. It had been done. Nico bit his lip, twisted his face away from the scene, and for good measure, squeezed his eyes shut. Finally, he to the tapped the answer. Tapped to the answer. Hello. A small, high-pitched voice was on the other line. You knew what it sounded like because you heard it yourself. His phone was on speaker. Nico realized everyone else was forced to be aware of it as well. Okay, this is a new person. Kala. Okay. This is Nicholas. Is this Nicholas Soros? It's Miss Kala. I'm calling all the way from the St. Sarabella boarding school to tell you the future. Give me a 10 and you'll know what to do then. Her catchphrase was well rehearsed and full of approachability. Kala was there to serve, but Nicholas only managed to squeak and fumble to turn the speaker off without hanging up. Liz didn't have a similar struggle. She couldn't stop herself from voicing a thought aloud and entering the conversation. I've heard that before. St. Sarah Bella? What do you mean? Who are you? Rather than replying the queries labeled at her, Liz instead delightfully declared the answer to a mystery that had been in only her heard. Ah, that's where Shiloh attended high school. I think he was also there for part of middle school, but that's besides the point. Oh, you know a fellow SS Bite? That's his last name. What's his last name? I can maybe, if the stars align, tell you about his future. Nico only watched helplessly. He couldn't cut Kala off by changing the phone's setting now, but words weren't working well enough for him to explain that she did not have to chat with Liz. Either unaware of or pointedly avoiding Nicholas's state, Liz bulldozed ahead. His name is Shiloh Leon Fields, but don't strain yourself to come up with something. He's 22 and graduated from that school years ago. I imagine you won't have much to say about that. That breakdown of the situation was punctuated by a snort from Liz. Excuse me. Miss Kala came right back with a scoff of her own before she even spoke. You got the impression Liz had met a challenger in smugness. I do know Charlotte Fields. He's got those huge eyes, freckles, and all those hats. I've always lived in this town. I didn't always go to SSB, but I was right nearby when he first moved in. So there. I know him and his whole group. They're infamous. Huh? For all her normal snack, your sister was speechless. She didn't even try to further compete. You couldn't blame her. A random psychic, the little brother of your boyfriend, happened to call. His familiar with your childhood playmate. I'm wondering if the music might be too loud. I mean, I can't hear it on this computer because the font. I don't know, the audio on this monitor is not that great. So maybe if I turn it down right there, just in case. You know, it might turn out to be louder on the video. Who knows? Whether it was luck, chance, fate, or pure coincidence, it was definitely odd. Okay, we're gonna pick something here. Really? Can you tell? Wait, it was. What about that guy who yelled at us? Stay conversation. Yeah, let's find out about that one guy. What's his name? Jeremy, I think? Yeah. Okay. Who is he? I bet they went to the same school. Hama didn't bother asking who you were. Your question got an instant reaction. Excuse me. Huh? Yes, that rude man. I'll never forget it. His name was Nate. Oh, that guy. I thought they were talking about Jeremy. I'm sure of it, but I don't know anything else about him. That's okay. I'm powerful enough to know. It's Nate Lawson. You're right. He's a big jerk. Or wait, no, Bay doesn't think that anymore. I'm pretty sure. Who and what? Nate was mean to someone I love, but he's so considerate. All has been forgiven. I guess I forgive him too. But anyway, her voice dipped lower, and every word was said slowly with emphasized inclination. It was valuable info, priced at around $10 and needed to be cleared. My prediction is that he is attending law school and therapy. He still yells at people, but not as much or as loudly. Nate Lawson, going to law school and therapy? Well, good for him. That makes 3 people who haven't let it go. Weary smile played about Liz's face. She meant it. After 5 years of bitterness, she only needed 2 sentences of second-hand explanation to forgive and forget. Kamala chirped again in her normal girlish tone, satisfied with a job well done. There you are, a whole reading specifically for you. Okay. For your wisdom. Yeah, very fun. So you're following him online, right? I'm gonna go with this one. It's honestly pretty nice to know what's going on. You're welcome. Something about that particular shout got through to Nicholas. He blinked out of the stunned look he'd been stuck in for an entire conversation, and sucked up a fast and full breath. Sorry about that, Kala. It's me, Nicholas Suarez. I'm here. Oh, I almost forgot why I was calling somebody. You're the real client. What do you want to ask about? It'd be nice to know why this is happening so late. I thought it was going to be in the morning. Sorry, she said, not sounding sorry even a tiny bit. My big brother Chand visited, and he's more important than you. Wow, that's low. Oh, there wasn't much Nico could say against that retort, though he still couldn't stop himself from looking sour. I know it. Really. He learned how it felt to be on the receiving side of such an attitude, and didn't appreciate the taste of humble pie. Both Derek and George guiltily chuckled on the sidelines at such a display of karma. Hey. The voice coming through Nicholas's phone reminded unapologetic, but a spark of genuine interest in the present returned to the self-described future seer. That's what you wanted to talk about? You've got Big Brother too? Miss Kala didn't practice the concept of client privacy. That was the second harsh lesson Nicholas got in a matter of minutes. He slapped a hand against one eye and hurled to the end of the call before any further education on life's displeasure could be taught. It's cool, forget it. I hope you have a very good day. Tell Chad I said hi. Chand I said hi. He doesn't know who you are. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Goodbye forever. From his face to the phone, Nicholas smacked his fingers against the screen to end the psychic connection. With a deep sigh, Nicholas' whole torso slumped over. He went low enough that his hands almost scraped the floor. The encounter had deflated him. What was what about? George posed the question out of a simple curiosity. He didn't give himself a hint of judgment or suspicion, but Nicholas reacted as if George asked where the last cookie went to his crumb-covered little brother. Nothing. It was about nothing. The total shutdown took George by surprise. He found the biggest brother of the bunch, took that as a sign to step in with a soft smile and some almost potential words.
Well,
Well, Nico can have his fun. We've all wondered about what might happen in the future. George's unusual placidity returned after a shrug. He could accept that Nicholas didn't appreciate any attempt at prying and being focused on chatting with Derek about his own matters.
no.
I haven't. I'm not sure I want to know. Realizing everything about me and everyone else was entirely set to the point where each move could be predicted would make the world feel almost pointless, even if it was a good future. But if it was a bad one, that'd be even worse. I'm convinced I definitely don't want to hear about my future. George nodded to himself. He'd reasoned it all out, and that chapter of the conversation could be closed. Until a low murmur came from a still dropping figure of Nicholas that left an ugly wrinkle across the page. It's easy for you to say. He didn't even he hadn't been trying to join into the conversation. He made it crystal clear it wasn't a topic up for discussion. Yet Nicholas was excuse me was
What's going on? Use magnetic.
jaded enough about whatever it was to voice the concept. Give me a second here. Moment. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think I read this part already. Alright. What's that supposed to mean, Nicholas? Free suspicion was no longer a description that applied to George's words. They were dripping in it. George's attention now on him, Nicholas coolly peered at his brother between the long, thick strands of hair that dangled in front of his eyes. He didn't speak. Derek's characteristic grin strained under the rising tension. He'd attempted to sidestep. He clapped his hands together and made another go at shifting focus.
That's a bummer.
Nicholas really is getting older. He's sized a lot more nowadays. Huh? The weight of the world is starting to get to him. That sucks, but there's no avoiding it as you grow up. Derek succeeded in getting George's icy stare pointing his way instead, but it didn't last. George watched him intently, only long enough to read what he could from his older brother's acts and deeds. He came to some kind of conclusion. At that point, the middle Suarez turned again to Nicholas. He didn't look at him. It was through him. Some things don't change even when you're older. George didn't grit his teeth or shout. There was a lack of feeling, a disconnectedness that was even worse than anger would have been. Nicholas's fingers tightened into fists, and he sprung right up. He stared into his brother's face defiantly. He shook with impotent rage. George laughed. George had been looking down on him, and easily still couldn't even at Nicholas's full height. That added an extra sting to what the younger Suarez said next. You know what sucks more than growing up? Being the last to grow up. I'm the one who gets left behind. I'm basically an only child now. It's just me and mom and dad at home. The flash of fury burned out quick. Nicholas began to crumble with every uh, cracking sentence.
Not fair.
And the worst part is, I'm probably just being annoying, right? The spoiled baby of the family who's always crying for attention. Of course, adults have to go out and do their adult things. It's dumb to think people could do anything else. So, I can't even talk about it with anybody. Nicholas's plight devastated Derek. He was ready to move heaven and earth to solve the conundrum of aging if he could. But George's features didn't so much as twitch. Did you really not tell anyone? It was callishness that left Derek speechless. He couldn't stop the days from going by, and he couldn't even stop his younger brothers from being mad at each other. Nicholas and George Soros glared at one another finishingly. And what was that supposed to mean, George? You told Derek, didn't you? He knew how you felt, and I bet he knows what the call was about. What else would have been talking about by the pool? You can always talk to Derek, only him. George had said it all without saying it. He was accusing Nicholas of loving Derek more than him, and George hated that. Well, am I right? The staring contest ended right there. Was Nicholas hung his head down, dropping his glance to the floor. That was only a battle. The war wasn't over yet. You're so smart and somehow not smart at all. Unaffected by the insult, but definitively frustrated from the lack of a real answer. George again once looked to Derek. Derek's mouth had continued to hang open in horror, but he finally closed it to turn his gaze away from the middle child. He didn't have any words to offer that time. George stood there between his two silent brothers, furtively turning from one to the other. They were crowded together in the same space, but seemed to be far away. Ultimately, it was the lack of response that George took as an answer, all alone, right next to the ones who cared about most. George whispered bitterly,
Fine.
I knew it. The suffocating stillness exploded. Nicholas wasn't finished. You don't know shit. I know there's no need having three of us around, Derek is more than enough for anybody. Shots were fired back and forth, and with no ground gained on either side. I was literally 6 when I obsessed over Derek. You can get over it already. I'll get over it as soon as you do. Nicholas thrust his arms out wide. Caught up in the heat of the feud, the need to take George down, he sacrificed the secret he'd hold on to so tightly. Well, guess what, George? I did tell Derek about that call. That means he can tell you all about how I never even mentioned him to the stupid psychic. I have 2 older brothers, not just him. I haven't forgotten that, even though you're so sure I have. When I asked for the reading, Derek was already long gone. I wasn't going to demand the universe bring him back. He had better things to do. Hey, that's not. Derek instantly spoke out against the idea that his family was such a low priority, but managed to hold his tongue. This was between Nicholas and George. Neither could even see Derek amid their mutual misdirected hurt. I wanted to ask how much longer I'd at least have you nearby. Maybe you'd go away after college, or maybe you'd stay here. I didn't know. But you might have felt bad if I asked you directly in case you were going to leave. I didn't want to hold you back from going for whatever in life you had in mind, with or without me around. And that's the only reason it was easier to admit to Derek. So, there. Nico's arms were folded faintly as he mimicked the snide closing remark the psychic used to tell Liz off. However, nothing about him came across as truly satisfied. He had to twist his face away to try hiding how glossy his eyes were. Nicholas wouldn't avoid the throat-clenching emotion in his voice. George was completely floored. Shock, sorrow, and relief fought for control over his face. It contorted with deep creases. You understood why Derek had kept quiet about what happened. It wasn't his place to admit something like that on Nico's behalf. After a pain stretch of silence, the feeling that settled in George's heart was an Olympic-sized pool of regret. Nicholas, I am sorry. I am so sorry. It was a struggle for George to speak. He swallowed thickly his Adam's apple bombing. He didn't try to cover how watery his eyes had become. You were right about me, and I was wrong about you. I haven't even gotten over the memory of being the odd man out, even though it was years ago. That's not fair. None of it has been. George looked to the sky, getting lost in its great expanse as he mind sank deep into the past. You and Derek have to have moments that are only for the two of you. You're not a set. We're not a set. We're individual people, and we have our own relationships. Though to me, it still always felt as if there's more moments of Nicholas and Derek than any other. When I was a kid, I never thought I could win. You were clear about whose company you were looking for. I didn't want to make things awkward by being the third wheel, and mostly I didn't want to test the water to see how much I was welcome between you and Derek. I was too afraid that I wouldn't be. It was better to tell myself I didn't need to be a part of it. His eyes and hands squeezed shut. George was unable to face his brother directly. He still forced himself to continue. But as much as I counted myself out, I wanted to be included. I wanted you to say George was back when I showed up, or that you wouldn't go somewhere if I wasn't coming too. Oh, Nicholas has got some tears going. And I wish I admitted that a long time ago. The stiffness over George's whole form released after he said the truth. His fists clenched at his shining earth green eyes could even seen again. He'd let go for real. While George was a pillar of peace, his brother was the opposite. Nicholas vigorously scrambled at his face, transferring tears and snort into his bare arms rather than his face. When he could at least pretend he'd pull himself together, Nicholas spoke again with absolute conviction. I'm sorry I ever treated you like that. Back then and still now, I think about how I feel on stuff. Obviously, it was easy for me to move on as if it was nothing, because I was the one getting my way. I stopped wanting it to be that way, and that was my closure. But how you're the ones having a good time while I'm watching on the sidelines. There's barely a place for me anymore. I really know how it feels instead of maybe getting some empathy, I still only thought about me and needed everyone else to care. Sorry, George. I guess I got what was coming with this. That conclusion brought a disagreeable frown from George's face. He looked over the youngest through a narrowed, serious glaze, but the firmness was founded on affection. It was unmistakable then. George wasn't simply a middle child. He was an older brother all along in his own way. Even when Nicholas wouldn't see it, he always had been.
No.
Nicholas, no, you didn't. You were in elementary school, remember? Why should you be punished for that? Besides, you're not giving yourself enough credit. Me and Derek did what we wanted to do with with your support. I'd say the only point you let your feelings go ahead of ours was when you first heard about Derek and Chippy's potential engagement. Briefly, Nicholas's focus was pulled away from George. He couldn't stop himself from glancing guilty in his direction. At that, a knowing smile ghosted over George's cheeks. He'd been as aware of what happened as both Derek and Nico himself. There was little George missed with his quiet, attentive ways. Proper stoicism returned before he continued, but even that was pretty minor. Going to college, moving out, growing up at different times, it brings separation, but banning you isn't what you deserve. And even if you did, I wouldn't be glad over it happening anyway. I didn't care about fairness. I'm biased. George's brows stayed pinched. He lost an air of teachers schooling their misguided student. The warmth of his affection was too apparent. Above all else, my family would get as much good as they can, even if it means they're spoiled sometimes. They shouldn't be spoiled.
Don't worry.
And that sentiment goes double for my little brother. Derek might have too, but don't forget that neither Nico, you're the only one I've got in the whole world. Nicholas's tears went unwiped. They were free to roll down his face while he shouted as loud as his lungs could manage. I love you, George. When you decided to pick a college nearby, that was one of the best things that ever happened to me. It's great when we work on those way two big puzzles together and play the weirdest games we can find. I never want to lose that. Even though I know you can't hang around here for the rest of your life, I want to keep. I want to keep coming back. I'm grateful every time you come through the door. George's lips trembled. His blinking was rapid for someone who as reserved as him. It was a display of emotion no lesser than Nico's heartfelt declaration. I don't want to lose you either. I love you. Sheepishly, George lifted his arms from his side. It was a small, subtle gesture. He didn't even bring them all the way up, but he took the initiative to reach out. Nicholas didn't need any more of a sign than that. He bounded ahead and jumped into his big brother's chest. George long felt fears of rejection were shattered for good. It took a second to get over the emotional and physical stun of Nicholas's hold, but soon George reciprocated. The two embraced one another fully, with nothing left standing in between. They were left in peace to have that. But once it was over, the two young men began to part. The piece missing from their brotherly bonding took a step forward. I'm sorry too. The unexpected statement got intimate laughter from the recipients. George and Nicholas threw their heads back and stayed unified with an arm over the other shoulders. What did you even do? For those two, nothing more of a joke than Derek missed the responsibility. The perfect guest serves needing to apologize. Derek scratched the back of his head, accepting his turn as the third wheel. He might be awkward over butting in, but Derek absolutely meant what he said. I did way too much of the wrong things and not nearly enough of the right things. I'm the one who incited on handling Nico all the time because I didn't want to ask for help and because I saw myself as the only big brother of the family. My overinflated sense of importance and martyrdom is what took away any space for George. But that was only when I thought there was something I needed to handle. If anything was fine, I wasn't there at all. I was too busy with school and practice trying to prove myself. Neither of you are to blame for how everything went down. You had to be demanding. You had to be demanding to get any attention, or you had to stay out of my way. I should have been there, not more, but better, and let you have each other too. At least I can do. The least I can do is apologize. The oldest attempt to accept responsibility was met with an almost fatherly chastising from both his younger siblings. George was able to glance down at Derek the way he could with his one little brother, while Nicholas shook his head and let out a world weary sigh. That's not true at all.
No.
Yeah, no way, Derek. I took demanding attention to the whole other planet. Sure, I was a kid, but that doesn't mean it was cool and easy to live with. I'm sorry for holding you back, or I didn't actually stop you from growing up, which is good. I'm sorry for your raining on your parade when you did go for what you wanted. That was totally ungrateful after how much you've given up for me already. You did the best you could, better than I would have if I had to be the responsible one. Can you imagine what disaster that would have been? We would have wouldn't have survived this long. That imagination brought Nico's giggles back. It lifted a sad smile into George's face, not the comment itself, but seeing his younger brother happy. He spoke sincerely to his older one.
It's okay.
I need to say sorry as well. You didn't try to push me aside. You didn't have to change too. I saw what I saw between you and Nico, how you were so close, and you had something that I wasn't a part of. But I decided entirely on my own to wait around for you both to come to me while never even attempting to be there for either of you. I should have made an effort for my family. You were there for me. George, in his calm presence, was one of a kind of his family. He was used to those he was used to those around him being far louder. However, Derek's and Nicholas's yells still caught the middle son off guard. It was full of rejection of his earnest admission, but as much as George believed that about himself, the refuting of it wasn't a surprise to anyone else. Each brother found their own faults as source of all problems, while the others could barely see those shortcomings past the love they held for their family member. From end to end of the semicircle of Suarez's, smiles began to spread. Alright, we're all sorry, and none of us need to be. How's that?
Yeah.
It's great. It's great. The two spoke same words, one after the other, still linked together. Derek watched them, swelling with pride that got to call him. Derek watched them, swelling with pride that got him to call them his family, his brothers, and his friends. F9, sure. F12 and oh, there it is. I think I took a picture of it. Okay. There we go. I'm trying to take a picture. I don't know if that marks, but okay. Perfect, but let's reframe what I was saying. Derek had a grin bright with confidence. He never looked more like the brother he hoped to be as he strode up to his little siblings. He clapped a hand to each of their backs, making a proper huddle along the trio, and stared at them head on. Excuse me, Nico. If you ever decided you were too big to need your older brother anymore and never wanted to see me, it'd break my heart. Please don't stop letting me be there as much as I can. Nicholas sniffled once more before nodding, determined. George, you'll always be my co-pilot. I know you've been backing me up since we were kids, and you're welcome with me anywhere, anytime. Your presence is my pleasure. Dark red flushed over George's face. He was too embarrassed to react with stridiness. Instead, he offered a shaky thumbs up in the center of the loop. It was true that George was Nicholas' reliable big brother, and he might have been the tallest of the bunch, but in front of Derek, you could never miss that he was also a little sibling. Letting out a bark of laughter, Derek gave the boys another smack across the shoulder bones for a good measure. Oof. I love it. And I promise that I'll always find a way to see you sooner or later. And when I can't be there in person, I'll call. We're never gonna lose touch. Love you, brothers. Tightening his grip on their shoulder, Derek physically signified his vow to never let his brothers go. Nicholas responded by letting his head rest on Derek's solid arm. Thanks, Derek. I can call too. Love you, George. Same for both what he said. I'll call and I love you. He followed after Nicholas in more than marriage. George placed his cheek against the well-trimmed side of Derek's head. This time with the full trio snuggled in a loving embrace. He looked on in relief. The tension, hurt, and subsequent comfort had been easily felt even without participating. You'd been entirely frozen, attention fixed on three brothers until a nudge to your arm brought focus to your own situation. Liz was smirking at you. At some point, both of you have stood. You couldn't remember exactly when you gotten on your feet. In the split of sibling affection, let me say that I appreciate being here together with you, Chippy, because it'd be more awkward if I was stuck watching this scene by myself. I love you too, Liz. You said affection. These weren't the words she had said, but you were certain it's what she meant. You get me. The two of you snickered into the palms of your hands. It was an attempt to be a little quiet, but your own sibling camaraderie was notable enough to gain onlookers of its own. Your sister and you glanced over to the intimate scene of brotherly love, only to find the group of them staring back at you. The three men expressed readiness, embarrassment. Nico being the least fused and George the most. Derek was the middle of the scale, too amused to and uplifted to feel that ashamed. But each came to the exact same conclusion about it. One more apology was needed after all. Sorry. I totally forgot you two were there. Oops. Sorry again. It's my fault. I pushed Nico to talk at a bad time, and we shouldn't have aired that out in front of you. I would say not. She leered forward, and a floral of bracelet she wore jingled on her wrist from the romantic way she placed her hands against her hips. You know I was very upset when you spoke about Derek being enough for everyone. I could hardly stay out of it. No offense, but George is my favorite of the Soros trio. Liz wasn't known for substantial touch. She was on the nose with all her thoughts and options. That kind of directness could only lead to one thing: George blushing again. Liz, you don't have a large hand landed square on George's head, started him, stalled him into stopping. It was Derek's. He wrinkled amiably. Hey, she's allowed to speak her mind after we did, and it's a solid choice. Agreed. That's a sensible lady with good taste. George smiled shyly.
Oh,
Thanks. Both of my brothers are my favorite. Me too.
right.
Same. Responses follow into one another or the other in perfect order, like dominoes lined up. Exactly so. All three of the Surahs are my favorite. The full collection of good boys beamed proudly. Which one does pictures? This one? That one? No, not that one. There. Okay. Is it that one? No. No. Oh, okay. Okay. There. Okay, there. There we go. Fixed it. There's supposed to be a button you're supposed to press to take pictures, but I forget which one. It's either F12, F11, F10, or F9. I'm not sure. But, I don't know. Okay. I already read this part. Glancing between the faces of each other, none of the individuality and familiarity in their features. You thought getting to spend this trip with those brothers was something you'd always be thankful for. When Derek's laughter filled the air, it rang differently than before, playing a new song. Man, if I was younger, this would have been the point where I jumped right into the pool. Clothes be damned. Luckily, I'm enough of an adult to remember. I've got an expensive phone in my pocket, not to mention my wallet. Yeah, I'm gonna say this. You could still do it if you put those down first. The solution was all the youngest Suras needed to literally jump at the chance for more trouble. Nicholas's eyes glittered like the sun drenched water tempting him. Yeah, I want to go in the pool. Far less enthusiastically, George joined the impromptu swim plan.
Huh.
That doesn't sound too bad. Yet, nonchalant way he shrugged over it seemed even more daring than Nicholas's open exhilaration. Let's do it. Before the third brother weighed in, Nicholas started to pull out his phone, the original match that lit a slow burning fuse so much earlier in the day. That was it for Derek Serres. His little brother might have been able to party harder than he could, but he didn't intend to be left that far behind. He wasn't so old after all. It's on. 3 phones as well as wallets, keys, coins, and old receipts and wrappers, and a few stray puzzle pieces were fished out and pulled up for safekeeping. Your sister's belongings stayed within the warmth of her romper. She was once again the incredulous observer rather than participant. This episode clearly entertained her more, though. Well, as the actual oldest sibling here, I'll supervise from up here. Good luck, boys. Thanks, Chippy. Thanks, Liz. A teasing chorus cheered. Then they were off. Derek, George, and Nicholas dashed in a roll straight towards the edge and flew into the air without hesitation. 1, 2, 3. The brothers crashed through the water, disappearing into an explosion of white bubbles. Sorry about that, my phone was going off. I should have turned it off. Okay. Give me a moment. Robert, will you answer that?
Oh,
And tell him I'm in the middle of recording, that's why I couldn't answer. But seconds later, their brunette heads with smiling faces popped out. Every Surah's brother celebrated with reckless abandonment. Abandon. Give me a moment. I gotta do something. I'm gonna have to do something here. Test. What? I'm in the middle of recording. That's why I couldn't answer. I'm trying to record a thing for YouTube.
We'll be out in a minute.
Sorry about that, guys. Every Sarah's brother celebrated with recklessness abandon. Wahoo! Awesome. Yeah. Liz applauded her show from outside the splash zone. It was a wise. The hell? Are you calling?
Yeah, see what's going on.
It was a wise choice, not only because of the obvious crossfire from the jaunt, but because Nicholas immediately started flensing water skyward. I'm gonna go ahead and stop it right here because I think something's going on I gotta take care of. So I'm gonna go ahead and save it right there for next time. And I'm gonna try to keep doing this as much as I possibly can, record for you guys. I know it's been a long time since I've done this recording for you guys, and I'm really sorry. I'm gonna try to keep up with it. I've been so busy, because I just moved recently and a lot of other stuff been going on, so that's why I haven't recorded. So thanks again for watching on my YouTube and supporting my YouTube channel. And don't forget to go check out my Patreon account and become a Patreon contributing member. You can find the link to my Patreon within the description area. And I will see you guys later.